Turn 3, obviously here, we are leading on to a long straightaway all the way down to turn 5. So getting a good exit really matters. And we know to get a good exit, what really matters is how early can I get back to full throttle after the apex point. So that's what we're really focused on. So a good brake zone indicator, there are obviously these number signs here on the left-hand side. But to be honest with you, this 200 board's a little bit hard to see because I want my eyes looking into the apex already. Like I'm picking up my turning point in my peripheral vision, and I've kind of got my focus vision starting to head towards the apex already. So really what I almost use is the end of this wall here on the left-hand side. It's almost like it goes from narrow to being more open. It doesn't look as obvious as on video, but when you're driving it, you do have this subtle feeling of openness starting to expand. And I'm sort of flat for a little bit longer after the end of it, and then I'm starting to apply the brakes. But again, that's a bit of a reference point that you can use to start to time in your brake zone. Typically, the brake zone's gonna be right about that 200 board or yeah, about that 200 board is sort of where we want to be going. See if we can see it here on my video. I'm about just inside the 200 board, about the 180 or something like that. So that's going to be our range. Again, we want a hard hit of the initial brakes, but we want to start to release off of that brake pressure so that we can keep some brake pressure on. We want to be really trail braking. The road compresses right about here. So this may seem like it's an early turning point, but because the road compresses, because we grip up, and because we can trail brake, we can get away with a little bit earlier turning point and actually still rolling pretty decent entry speed. The exit is the more important thing, but you'll be able to roll more speed than you think through turn 3. So notice again, I'm not apexing the start of this painted curb here. That would be too early, but I'm not apexing that much later than it either. So I would say we're apexing right about here, about the middle of the curb, and only once I'm ready to start unwinding the steering wheel do I want to get back to throttle. No earlier than that. So right about here, I'm getting back to a throttle, getting back to aggressive throttle, and once again, I want my eyes picked up to the exit curb back in here, because I want you starting to unwind that steering wheel as early as possible. Use every inch of the road. So trying to get back to full throttle before we get out to this exit curb. Using this exit curb, the one important note is there's a pretty big divot that usually exists at the end here that we want to try to avoid. So I want you out over here, but be diligent about working it back onto the racetrack because that can tear up some race cars. If it's not always there, but it's quite often that the ground gets picked up and it could be a pretty large drop. So again, now we're definitely back to full throttle. We've got to launch all the way down to turn 5.